2024.
Okay, all those in favor? Laurel,
Aye.
Lindsay?
No.
Jay? Mary Lou?
Aye.
Jan?
Aye.
Nancy?
Yes.
Kathy?
Aye.
Lee?
Yes.
Bob is a yes. Okay, we want to welcome Jay Tellerman, who is going to give us a presentation on the open items meeting and the role and responsibilities of the trustees. Welcome, Jay.
Oh, glad to be here. Again, Jay Tallerman, Town Council. Don't call me Mr. Tallerman. Call me Jay. I will confess my wife is a librarian, so it's always good to meet library folks from other towns. So we're pleased to do this. We do this pretty routinely for towns, open meeting law, public records. We're going to focus on the open meeting law tonight. And there's some of the things I'll talk about will apply, some of them might not. The way this works, and if it works well, is that, you just stop me, raise a hand, blurt out, do whatever you like. If you want to discuss something or ask a question about something, I do not mind getting off track. In fact, I think some of our better discussions will happen if we digress to talk about things that are of importance to you. So, but otherwise, I'm going to try and share some screen here. See if that works. Everyone can see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, excellent. All right. So, and the slides are going to guide us through it more or less. Again, stop me if I talk too fast or if you want me to back up on something, but I am going to digress a fair bit. So the first thing I want to talk about is the open meeting law itself. It used to be, so the open meeting law, as we understand it now, is actually very different than it was, say, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, the open meeting law was just a fragment of what it is now, and it wasn't enforced and managed by the Attorney General's office like it is now. It was managed by each county's district attorneys. And frankly, it was a mess because each county's district attorneys, couldn't be bothered during their busy days with weighing in on disputes over the open meeting law and whether local boards or even state agencies are complying with it. And second, they would sometimes decide things differently from each other. So there was this patchwork of decisions. It really didn't work that well. So a number of years ago, they decided to kind of centralize it. And what they did was create an agency within the Attorney General's office, the Division of Open Government, unfortunate acronym of DOG, but look, they chose it themselves, so they have no one else to blame but themselves. And so they run it. And they have a number of regulations that they have adopted pursuant to it. They issue advisories, they're available for discussion, and they otherwise kind of manage disputes under the open meeting law. A word about the Division of Open Government. They are the Attorney General's office, and do have substantial authority to enforce. But by and large, when it comes to municipal compliance of the open meeting law, because there's also compliance of state agencies, the Division of Open Government isn't out to hurt anyone. They recognize that most people that are meeting in municipalities are volunteers that have day jobs that don't have as part of their job description on a daily basis to be intimately familiar with the ins and outs of the open meeting law. So 99% of the time, if you make a mistake under the open meeting law and someone calls you out on it, if that's what even happens, they're just going to say, don't do it again, or speak to town council and kind of think about this change in your behavior. It is very rare on the municipal side, especially when they will do something more than that. So, you know, which isn't to say that we should ignore compliance, but I don't want ever to, it's easy for me to say as an attorney, don't worry about it. But if you make a little mistake on the open meeting law, and we'll talk about some of the common mistakes, by and large, it's not the hugest deal in the world, and we can move on and just kind of chalk it up to live and learn. So, okay, we start with the open meeting law with who it applies to, and it applies to public bodies. That means any multi-member board, committee, etc., to serve a public purpose in a town. So a board of library trustees, for example, would be one. It would also apply to a an offshoot, a subcommittee of the library trustees. If they said, hey, 3 of you or 2 of you go off and develop a policy regarding computer usage in the library or something. That little subcommittee, if it's more than one person, is designated with a specific purpose, so they are required also to comply with the open meeting law. So they are also a public body that is required to do it. The public body itself, it only applies. How many members in the trustees?
9.
9.
9. Wow, that's a big board of trustees. It only applies to a quorum. So if 4 members of the trustees get together for whatever reason, even to discuss business of the trustees, but just kind of find themselves together talking business, that's not a public body. A public body is the quorum of it. Now, we don't recommend that you do workarounds from the of the requirement for there to be a quorum and conduct meeting of groups of 4 to do your business. In fact, if 3 members or 4 members of the library trustees meet and talk about something, okay, not a public body, so not a meeting, no open meeting law compliance. But if then one of those members has the same conversation with the 5th member, you will have acted as a public body, i.e. a quorum of the board. And we'll get into that a little bit more. So essentially, whenever you all get together as a whole body or a subcommittee of the body, you're a public body and the open meeting law applies to you. But it only applies to you. It doesn't apply to you when you're talking about the weather and because you see each other at the supermarket. It applies to you when you're meeting for the purpose of having deliberations. And deliberations means any oral, written, electronic, email, whatever it is, discussions in some way, shape, or form, electronic or in person or by Zoom or whatever, about something that the Board of Library Trustees does. It doesn't, again, apply to talking about the Red Sox, about, you know, talking about the weather or whatever else. It doesn't apply to mere scheduling discussions. It only applies to talking about the meat of the matter, the affairs of the Groveland Library. That's when it applies. So those are kind of 2 touch holds here. Another thing that we talk about, any questions on that the last bit? No? Okay. Another thing we talk about is intentional violation, which means that the violation that occurs has to be intentional for it to be a violation of the open meeting law. However, you can never say, especially because when you get sworn in as a member of the board, you get a copy of the open meeting law. You can never say, hey, I wasn't aware of that. Or, you know, geez, I didn't know. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse. And so what we try and tell people is essentially, if you violate the open meeting law, it's going to be considered a violation. Again, if it's an innocent violation, and even some intentional violations, the Division of Open Government isn't likely to do anything about it, even if they find out about it. But essentially, the term intentional violation means everything, even if it was inadvertent in some respects. Very rare that they say it wasn't intentional. Okay. So again, deliberation happens at a meeting of a public body. However, there's some exceptions to that, to what a meeting is. So first of all, a meeting is, again, a gathering of a quorum of the public body, a quorum of the Board of Trustees. It is not, however, several other things that are not particularly meetings that where you get together to do business, but you have an exception to. So first of all is an on-site inspection of something. So if you were contemplating something that doing something in your library that another library does, and you go and meet at that library to see what it's all about and go to that and to gather facts and information, that is not a meeting. You don't have to post that meeting with the town clerk. There is a caveat to that, however, and that is that if you go there, you're really, or for anything else, you're really just fact gathering. You're not going to that other place for site inspection, maybe a location of a new library or something else, to then deliberate on it. You're going there to get smart and to understand it. But that is exempt from having to post a meeting. Similarly, if you go to a training session that is being done for library stuff or anything lightly, relating to that in any way, shape, or form, or a program or anything else like that, that's also not a meeting, even if you're going there to attend as a group. Social events are not meetings. Sometimes you might find yourself at an event such as, let's say, good example, I guess. Let's say the town was seeking a override, a debt exclusion to pay for a new wing on the library or substantial renovations to the library. And someone was having an event at their house to raise awareness of it in favor of it, or not in favor of it, as the case may be. And a quorum of your board wound up at that event. The mere fact that it's an event and it might have something to do with the library doesn't make it something where you're conducting business and should have posted. Now, if a quorum of you speak to the whole group on that particular matter, then it would be an issue. But if you're just attending to kind of understand what folks in town are doing and maybe to speak individually to members that had questions, that's fine. So it can be a pretty broad definition, and it's meant in some respects to encourage board members to attend trainings, to attend events of interest in their town, without worrying that someone's going to say, aha, you're doing an illegal meeting. So we're trying to promote boards to attend meetings of in other events or anything else like that. In fact, the third bullet is you can even attend as a quorum another board's meeting and listen in, attend as a group. What you can't do is then offer a lot of substantive commentary on that about something that you are currently considering as a board. So let's take the same example of potential expansion of the library. If another board, select board, finance committee, whatever, is discussing that, then you can go and attend. What you can't do is talk about something that you will then be deciding later if you're attending as a group. So you can sit there and be quiet. You can also, if you want, report to that board something that you've already done, such as, hey, we took a vote in favor of this, just wanted you all to know. But you can't start deliberating or talking. And this gets a little nuanced, and we're not thrilled about this notion, and this is in the bottom set of bullet points on this issue. But you have to be a little careful on what you say. But plain attendance at a select board meeting. Of course, however, if you know that a quorum is going to be at a select board meeting or a FinCom meeting and you want to speak perhaps, then we'd probably recommend that you just post the meeting. It's pretty simple. Just get a posting at the town clerk and post it for whenever that other board is meeting if you had any concerns about it.
That's generally what we've been doing, just to err on the side of caution.
Yeah, always makes sense. And why not? It's easy enough to do. And if a
Right.
quorum doesn't show up, you know, that the town clerk's always happy to post a meeting. There, the only hang up there is, I guess, you got to take minutes. Now, those minutes might not say anything because you might just be listening at the other
Right.
meeting, but it's pretty easy to comply with that and removed out. Again, not likely to be particularly controversial. But sometimes in some towns, like again, I'll use the override question for a library expansion. Those can be pretty heated issues, and there could be people that are against it. And you know, there's always someone who wants to make a little trouble. And so we always recommend posting you know, where you want to. The last bullet here is pretty
Can I just
important.
ask a question? Oh.
Sure, absolutely.
So if you're going to another committee or board's meeting and you have posted it as, you know, the library board's attending, let's say we're going to the FinCom or the
Sure.
selectmen, are you saying we can't speak?
No,
Even
you
if we
can in that
posted it?
instance, you can do whatever you want.
Okay, once we've posted it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
just making sure.
The only thing you couldn't do there because you're within a meeting is kind of huddle privately and whisper and kind of
Oh,
conduct
right, or
that. So,
deliberate, right,
right, if you're going to speak at that meeting, then it should be just open and obvious, you know,
okay,
what you're saying, because there's some requirements about that. So
okay, thank you, yeah. Just
the
making
other
sure.
exemption that I think is important is exemption E here, and that's town meeting. So what's interesting about the open meeting laws, the way it was drafted, is it doesn't say anything about attending as a board at town meeting is or isn't allowed. So it stands to reason that if you were attending the town meeting and perhaps were even going to speak at that town meeting as a group to advocate for an appropriation for a new library wing or the library budget or whatever, that, hey, that's deliberation. But what the Attorney General has said about that is that it's really impractical to consider that a violation at the legislative session of the town, and we'll never enforce against that. So it's kind of this weird netherworld there, but suffice to say, if you find yourself as a group at town meeting and want to speak on the library budget, or again, a library capital expense or something, you don't have to worry about posting for that. Now, if you were going to meet beforehand and before town meeting as a group out in, like, you know, a conference room at the wherever they're holding town meeting and kind of get your strategy together, that you would have to post for. And it, like, for example, it's typical for the select board and the FinCom and maybe the planning board, if they're zoning, to post meetings for town meetings so that they can do things outside of town meeting, either just before or during a recess or something else like that. Okay, meeting notices. So meeting notices, this is pretty straightforward. You don't hold too many hearings, I don't think. But although there is, I guess, an instance where you might hold a hearing, but it's usually just a 48-hour notice and it's just posted. The notice has to be, you know, I have a couple of slides here about what notice has to be. Generally speaking, you don't have to worry about it. That's for the town clerk to worry about. But if you want to post a meeting, your monthly meeting or however often you meet, or some other meeting to discuss some other business, discuss a complaint against a patron or something like that, or, you know, an expulsion, something more emergent in nature, then you're really just going to the town clerk 48 hours in advance and getting that posted. So what does that posting have to include? The date, the time, the place of the meeting, the date the notice was posted, and the purpose of the meeting. Now, the chairperson generally, sometimes it's left to a staff person, which is fine. But as a matter of law, the agenda is kind of, at the end of the day, the responsibility of the chair. It's often a group effort or a staff effort that does it, but it is really the chair's agenda. And the way I suggest that you should think about the items on your notice, and it used to be under the old version of the open meeting law that you would have things like new business, old business, and then you'd post a meeting. But you can't do that anymore. They do require that you have some specificity. And the rule is kind of like this. You should give enough information so that someone sitting at home looking on the town's website or looking at the bulletin board at town hall for the meetings can look at it, see the description, and make a decision as to, oh, that seems interesting to me. I want to go to that meeting. So if there's a budget thing, you might say discussion of annual budget. If there is discussion of a capital thing, discussion of new sprinkler system or new collection or something like that. If there is discussion of appointment of, a new director, assistant director, children's librarian, or whatever, you would state that. So it doesn't have to be a million words. It just has to be enough so that, again, a reasonable person looking at it would say, oh, I understand what they're discussing. Now, if you have things like old business and new business on there, I would probably stop that practice generally because it doesn't describe anything. And if you end up discussing something of importance under new business or old business, then no one really has notice of that. Here's the exception to that, however. So if at your meeting, the library director attends and does something like wants to give you notes, catch you up on what's happened at the library since your last meeting, I don't mind, and the Attorney General doesn't mind if you have library director's notes. And so that the library director or whoever, whatever staff person is going through this can then describe to you like the events of the past month. That is totally fine. The only caution there is that if anything in that list is important enough for you to have any kind of back and forth or discussion, you should save it to the next meeting so that you would make notice of it. So you can have a little bit, well, that's interesting, keep up the good work, or when's the next, that next program going? I don't care about that. That's just ministerial. But if you want to have a roundhouse discussion on something that came up in a, just kind of that note format, then that's fine. So I don't mind a more general thing like that, but things like old business, new business, that really shouldn't be on your notice, your publications.
Ask a question.
Yeah.
So you were talking about the 48-hour notice. What's the situation if something happens and you say, we really need to meet now? We can't, right? Is that what you're saying?
Okay. So no. So I don't think it's on this. I'm getting to that. So there is an opportunity to meet for emergency purposes, but it is rarely truly an emergency. So if the mere forgetting of something to put something on a notice is never an emergency, that said, my boards use it typically. What could be an emergency? Let's say this actually happened in my wife's library over a weekend. A sprinkler blew, and everyone had to get together for a quick meeting and decide how they were going to deal with it. That's an emergency. You have to do it. And that's fine. And so if you truly reasonably couldn't have anticipated something that came up and you have to meet on it quickly, another real life kind of library example, a problem patron comes in every day. And if your library director doesn't feel comfortable enough about giving that person kind of a no trespass order, and you have to meet quickly on it because it's a true disturbance, you could see how things like that could happen on an emergent basis. But the Attorney General doesn't love the emergency exception. So if something does happen in an emergent situation, our recommendation is that you still, especially if there's an online version of your meeting notice, put an asterisk and try and put it in, go to the town clerk's office and try and put it in. And then also at the next session, the next duly posted session of the board, then you might give a recap of it just so as to make sure that folks know about what happened in that, in that particular emergency session there.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question now? Our
course.
bylaws state that the agenda must be a conjoint between the director and the chair. They make the agenda to make sure we cover everything.
That's
Anything.
fine. And that's in a bylaw, or is
That's,
that,
we put that in our bylaws, yes.
so that's a town general bylaw?
Right, well, it's a library bylaw approved by town meeting.
Right, right.
Right.
Okay, that's great. So if that's what it says, then
Yeah.
that's what you do.
So I have a question too. So we usually have the director give a director's report where, like what you were saying, the update on what's going on,
Sure.
the numbers, the whatever, but at times there are, and we do have a thing, votes may be taken. Like she may be, like tonight, there will be money she's requesting for programs. We can't vote on that because we didn't know what they were in ahead of time on the agenda.
Well, so I think it could be a few things there. So like payment of bills and things like that, if it's routine and that comes up, that might have its own little bullet point without much of a description, that's fine. But if it's to consider whether or not you should have a program and there's discussion of the program, then I would say that should probably be an agenda item. But if it's just routine, hey, folks, we have to pay the bills, here's the payment warrant and sign it, then I don't really have a quarrel with that. It's really if you think about deliberation as it's truly the discussion part when you're kind of getting into like the merits of something. So merely imparting something and saying, hey, I have this program started, I've told you about it in the past or whatever, and I just need you all to approve it. The check, I'm not too worried about that because that's just routine business, and state law requires that the board probably approve the payment of those bills. But if someone says, hey, I'm thinking of running this program, what do you think about it? That's a different discussion, I think.
Okay.
And that would require some amount of notice. I mean, I'd like to give the library director pretty broad scope of authority to discuss things with you, even if there's a minor question or two. It's really the more meaty questions that we should reserve for actual agenda items.
Okay.
I mean, what if it just says request for programming funds as a bullet point under director's report?
And these
'Cause
are
that's what we have for
programming
tonight.
funds. We've already discussed the programs, we just haven't nailed it down.
Yeah, that's fine, because if it's just about, hey, I just need you guys to sign off here on these funds, which is a business function that runs through the director into the board, then I have no quarrel with that, especially if those programs are already common knowledge. So here's more on the emergency. Was there another question?
Yeah, I just had a couple. I noticed that a lot of boards put next to an agenda item, votes may be taken. Is that required?
No, it isn't. I don't mind it being there, and some board that has become traditional for boards. If there's a item up for discussion, then it's clear that a vote could be taken. Because there could be a motion on it. So you don't need that language. I don't have a problem with that language, but it's not required.
What
And that
about,
comes up frequently.
right, what about the one that you see frequently, items not reasonably anticipated at posting?
So, that's what we just talked about, the emergency
Right.
stuff
Yeah.
there. That's surplusage. It doesn't describe anything. So you can leave it on there if you want, but it really doesn't matter because those things are going to be on a case-by-case basis anyway. And again, it's an exemption from the requirement to post within 48 hours, although I would, again, recommend that if you make your agenda on a Friday and you have a Monday meeting and Monday morning, an emergency happened over the weekend, I would recommend go to the clerk's office and have them put in an asterisk there and, you know, and then discuss it then. So, but make sure you state that it was an emergency when you open that agenda item, like we're discussing this matter, it was less than 48 hours, here's the emergency, and then you can discuss.
Well, I wasn't really thinking emergency. I just know that that's at the end, it's just saying if there's something,
Right, if it wasn't reasonably
but then you
anticipated,
can't- so you can't also, if you can't put old business on, right, then you really can't talk about anything from a previous meeting unless it's stipulated on your agenda. Is that correct?
right, things not reasonably anticipated don't rise to the level of something that you don't have to comply with the 48 hours notice. If you just, hey, I didn't anticipate it, unless it's something you have to do with less than, because it's an emergency situation, you should save it for the next meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
On old business, I sort of view it as, and I guess I know what the solution would be, is we have in the past discussed several issues and we haven't come to a final resolution of them. And they're really ongoing discussion points, but we don't want to lose track of the fact that, oh, we reached this level of acceptance, but we still need some more work on it. And the idea would be to put it in writing someplace that we don't lose it. Because in the past, we've had discussions on something 6 months ago, and then all of a sudden said, oh, what about this? And then we have to reinvent the wheel.
Well, again, I don't mind hey, what happened to that issue in a quick answer, but no back and forth. But if you want to pick up something and then have a back and forth on it, then it should be reposted. You should be posted with specificity. If a member says at a meeting 6 months later said, hey, library director or other board member, whatever happened to that issue, I don't mind a quick response. It can't then be a back and forth where you're going to reopen deliberation on it.
Right, so by deliberation, you mean voting.
No,
Not
discussion
necessarily.
of the merits of it. Voting isn't, voting is part of deliberation, but deliberation is a discussion of
Right.
something that's within the library, the Board of Library Trustees jurisdiction. So anything library events, money, employees, books, grounds, all that
Grounds, we want to
stuff.
put flowers outside. We can't, so let's say tonight it's other, I think we have it under other. It would be something someone might say, oh, is anyone going to do the flowers out front for spring? We can't discuss that tonight. We have to have it on the agenda. So our agenda is going to be like 30 pages long. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Again, is someone going to be knocking down your door because you discussed, had a few comments back and forth about what kind of plantings you're going to do in front of the library? No, but the technical requirement is that if you're having a back and forth discussion about something of import to the library, then it should be posted. Do I think it's silly sometimes? And are you highlighting something that is a silly element of the open meeting law? Of course it is. But you can see that there's a substantial amount of gray area there. So something that we could all agree on that really isn't of much substance, the next person might agree really strongly, or we could flip a few facts and make it actually very substantive. What if that discussion on flowers led to a discussion like, hey, are we going to cut down that tree? And it turns out to be some kind of heritage tree that is protected by the Mass Horticultural Society. So, it doesn't take much to put it in the category of something that, whoa, maybe the public should have been here. So these meetings, what I like to say about these notice requirements, which again, can be a drag. The notice isn't for you. The notice is for everyone else. There might be people out there, and we know that people work hard, your local garden club or whatever on your landscaping, people out there might be really interested. So
Okay.
do I think we can make anything seem silly under the open meeting law? I do. But the requirements are the requirements.
So basically, we should err on the side of caution and use a little dose of common sense.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Thanks.
Okay. So conducting the meeting, and there's a million opinions on how to conduct a meeting. Basically, what I would say is that it's always the chair's meeting. Just the way town meeting is the moderator's meeting. So I'm actually the moderator in my town, and it's my meeting, and I run the meeting. Now, but I'm never going to tell a chairperson how to run their meeting. There are quiet chairs, and the meetings are very conversational. There are very strict chairs that say only through me, and everyone asks for permission to through me to speak. I don't care how you run it. The law is that it's the chair's meeting, and the chair can control the flow of it. And the chair can say, when something's gone on or moving on to the next agenda item, they announce the opening of the meeting normally, etc. If someone comes in and wants to film your meeting, there's another obligation of the chair. That person has to come to the chair, and then they have to state it. You can't deprive someone of the right to film your meeting, but it also can't be obnoxious. But they have the right to do it. And then the chair normally would say, hey, this meeting's being recorded. So, but aside from that, the chair determines the flow of it. I'm never going to tell a chair how to run their meeting. Just note that if something happens, something gets ruly. We had an issue in a library in a town we represented where there was a very active local, very topical book banning group. We all see that lately. It's a shame. And they were very obnoxious at a board of library trustees meetings. And the chair said, hey, stop. And they wouldn't. The chair called the local cops and asked the people to leave. And the chair has the authority to do that if people are being truly unruly. Now, there's a difference between speaking at a meeting and being unruly. Now, it may not necessarily apply to all of you, but the fact that you're holding a meeting in a public place does not necessarily mean that you have to let everyone speak. So if someone is speaking out of turn in the audience, you can say quiet. This isn't a public forum. This isn't the public square where everyone has a right to speak. Now, if you choose to have a public forum at your meeting, at the start of your meeting, where, hey, does anyone of the public want to speak? Then you will have opened it up and can't allow some people to speak, but deprive other people from the right to speak. We don't particularly recommend that unless you're in a hearing format, which wouldn't happen very often for trustees of a library, that you do that. We don't mind if you let someone speak on a topic, but you're not required to let everyone speak on a topic that comes up. So there are some First Amendment implications. It usually happens more frequently with boards like the select board in your town, where they do allow some amount of basic public forum. This has been a little bit of a hot button issue because there's been some recent litigation on it, and because also people just kind of feel the right to just start yelling and screaming at meetings, whether they're on Zoom or in person. So any questions on that? I'm kind of abbreviating it a bit, but it has been a bit of an issue. So, but you do control the right for folks to speak. And if someone ever gets up at your meeting and says, I have a First Amendment right to speak, I can't stand the books that you have in this library and I demand whatever, that person doesn't have the right to interrupt your meeting like that. So that's kind of these slides a little bit. And in the case where it came up in is the town of Southborough, where the select board did hold like 10 minutes of public forum at the beginning of their meetings, where people could get up and air their grievances however they saw fit. It wasn't just to give announcements. They could essentially say what they thought was right or wrong about town government. And a lot of select boards do it. We don't always recommend it, but these people got up and were saying some pretty nasty things. And the select board chair stopped them and they sued. And the court said, no, you can't stop them. I mean, there are some lines they can't cross, truly hate speech, harassment, sexual or gender specific harassment, and some other things, actual threats of violence, things like that. But you could use pretty charged language. So our recommendation has been not to hold public hearings if you're concerned about that kind of conduct, or not public hearings, public forum at the beginning of your meetings. If you want to do that, and you certainly have the right to do it, you have to be careful not to stop people that just because they're expressing an opinion you don't like. You can have restrictions on the amount of time they speak and how long that session is in general. For example, you can say you get 1 minute apiece, and this is only going to go for 5 minutes. So you can put some restrictions on that. But again, because it can be very confrontational, and because it is very confrontational these days out there in public meetings, that we recommend that think twice perhaps before holding like a true public forum for members of the public at your meetings. Okay, so there's a difference. We hear these terms abstaining and recusing pretty frequently, and there's a difference between them. Abstaining is just you're choosing not to vote for whatever reason. You can still sit with the board. You can just choose not to vote on something for whatever reason. You can't be compelled to do it. Now, some might say, hey, look, you took this job, you should be voting, but no one has to vote if they don't want to. So you can say you're abstaining and still sit with and even deliberate with the board, but just abstain from the vote or any part of the discussion. Recusal is a little bit different. When you recuse yourself, you're recusing yourself from the discussion, removing yourself from the discussion because you have a conflict. Ethical, normally you work for someone, we can talk about what constitutes a conflict if you like, but if you have a financial interest in something or the entity that you're speaking to, or for whatever reason there is a conflict, then you would recuse yourself. If you recuse yourself from a particular matter that the board is discussing, you have to remove yourself from the meeting table where the board is meeting. You don't have to leave the room. Some people have said, oh, you got to leave the room. You don't. You just have to go to where the audience would sit, the public would sit that wants to watch the meeting, and go there. You could even participate as a citizen if you wanted, but you would have to do that from the audience. And you might want to say, hey, I'm speaking as a citizen and not as a Board of Library Trustees member when doing that. But that's if there is a conflict of interest. Questions on that?
That's a recusal for subject matter.
Well, yeah, if for any particular matter that the Board of Library Trustees is discussing, if you have a conflict of interest and don't feel you should participate, you would recuse yourself.
And then rejoin the meeting.
Afterwards. Yeah, if it was the second agenda and you had 4 more agenda items afterwards, yeah, you can then come right back up to the board and sit with them and carry on. So I'm not going to get too much into remote participation because we've got all this great Zoom stuff. So if and when the Zoom stuff goes away, there are other ways to meet remotely, but it's rarely offered. So, but we don't have to worry about that until the spring of 2025. So I'm not going to get too much into that for the time being.
Can I ask a question about that, though?
Sure.
What we've been doing since we've been meeting, hybrid Zoom, is we've been making all our votes roll call votes.
They have to be.
They
Yeah.
have to be. That was my question. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
All,
so-
all votes in the
Yeah.
Zoom meetings have to be roll call vote.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
So that's what we've been doing. That's good. Okay.
Good.
Thank
I
you.
had-
You're
I had
welcome.
just one question about Zoom meetings. When we
Sure.
do the minutes, are we supposed to specify who was in person and who was remote? When we say who was present?
I don't think it's necessarily required that you specify whether the board member was present by remotely or in person. I don't think that's in the governor's order. I don't think it hurts to do it, but I don't think that's a requirement because presence is presence.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
We were told otherwise. Okay.
yeah, again, I don't think it's a terrible idea, but I'm not sure that it needs to be specified. I could dig around in that, but I haven't heard that that's an actual requirement. So,
Can I just, also, speaking of attendance, so if someone who is not on the board is attending, like an actual, like you, your name needs to be put that you were there. Anyone else who's like at the meeting,
no, you don't. I
No?
mean, sometimes people take
unless it's a
attendance.
guest? Okay, yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
you don't have to have, I mean, look, you could have a meeting with, I know it doesn't happen often with a board of library trustees, but you could have a meeting with 200 people in it. You're not going to take attendance of that and have to put that in there.
Okay.
Similarly, I think it's pretty common, and we'll talk about this when we get to minutes in a minute, to ask someone when they get up to say something, if you're allowing them to do it, to say their name and their address. I think that's pretty routine
Mhm.
and it's pretty fair to ask them that. If they choose not to give it to you, then, I'm not sure there's much we can do about it. Most people will, but there is some issues that are kind of emerging on the confidentiality of someone who wants to talk. Again, that would be in more controversial settings that we see. I don't really see it as much of an issue in your meetings. I mean, I think we could come up with an example where it might be, but by and large, people are going to largely say who they are. And I think the practice of asking them for the purposes of the minutes is a okay idea. Okay, email. Let's talk about email for a second. So I've been looking at open meeting law stuff as part of my job as town council in a whole bunch of towns for a few decades. And I think if I had to say, I'd probably say that I see a violation of the open meeting law by email every day. As a board member in my town over the years, not currently, I'm just the moderator, I've probably violated the open meeting law by email. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that each of you either has or will violate the open meeting law by email or text or whatever at some point. I don't know what it is about email, but it is the most common form and the easiest form to violate the open meeting law. So there's some things that we can do and can't do, but electronic communications are the same thing as oral communication when it comes to compliance. So there's some things that we can do by email that are totally fine. So let's say we're talking about your budget, the library's budget. Let's say the library director works up the budget and wants to get it to you all a few days before your meeting. No problem whatsoever. The library director can prepare the budget or whoever is preparing the budget, prepare the budget, even prepare a memorandum on the budget and send it to you all by email. No violation, nothing, not a problem. If someone hits reply all, or if each person replies to the library director with different comments on the budget outside of the meeting, and i.e. if 5 people do that, then we have a problem because there's deliberation. There's a discussion in and amongst board members about a subject matter of the library. So it's important that we separate out like a logistical question. So again, same email comes in, and we're going to discuss this at our next meeting, and someone says, well, what time is that going to be on our agenda? That's fine. Those are just logistical questions. Those aren't questions about the budget itself. I don't mind that. So the dissemination of the information is fine. The discussion, the replies about the information that was disseminated is not fine. And the other key principle is that serial communications. If I'm member 1 and I email member 2, and we start having a discussion about the library budget, and member 2 emails trustee member 3, and then 4, and then 5, even though they were all separate conversations, they're linked together by subject matter, and there were 5 people engaged in a discussion of the same thing. And then it becomes somewhat problematic from a deliberation standpoint. So this is where we see a significant amount of violations. And again, I don't know what it is about electronic communication where we just want to respond and talk, but it is a fairly common way to violate the open meeting law. And we should probably try and keep it to a minimum. So, but that's how it comes out. The other areas of electronic communication that are important to discuss, Facebook is a big issue that we don't really have a really much of a body of law by the Division of Open Government on this, but Facebook is a medium where we can discuss things. Same thing with Instagram or Twitter. And whether or not it's the library's own Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever other social media account, there's dozens of others, or there's like a local community one. If there's a discussion on it, by in between a quorum on the same thread anyway, by in between a quorum of the board members, then that could be viewed as a meeting of the board members because you're deliberating. Now, I've seen some absurd examples of this that I'm not exactly sure would be a violation. Let's say, again, we'll use the hypothetical situation of a controversial rebuilding or expansion of the library, multi-million-dollar project. People are up in arms about it on Facebook. Some people love it. Some people, are concerned about their taxes and don't love it. Some people don't like books and they don't want it or see the need for it, whatever it is. Let's say some kind of thread starts at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning on the local community Facebook page. And at 10 o'clock in the morning, a library member, a trustee member gets on and says, well, that's not true. Here's the actual facts about what we're proposing. Okay, fine. And then 20, 30, 40, 50 more comments, because these things can really spin out of control. 2:30 in the afternoon, another member gets on and dispels or explains another thing on the same subject matter. And again, a couple hours later, a third and a fourth and a fifth library member get up there. Now, you've all been on the same conversation thread and you've all offered commentary. So from a technical perspective, we think that there's some potential that someone could say, well, you deliberated. I can count 5 trustee members talking about this. And someone that has an axe to grind with your library expansion might call the Division of Open Government and say, look, you know, over the course of 24 hours and 620 Facebook posts, these 5 members offered 1 line of commentary on this Facebook thread. I tend to think that the Division of Open Government doesn't have enough time in the day to worry about that stuff. But we can see how social media is never your friend when you're a public official. You're almost always, I mean, there's a no good deed goes unpunished when you put yourself out there for this kind of stuff. So I'm not telling anyone to not use social media to talk about things that you care about deeply about the library. What I am saying is that it is a potential breeding ground for someone to claim that if a bunch of you all get together in the same Facebook or Instagram or Twitter chat, then, you know, there's arguably some deliberation there. So, okay. Executive session. Do you guys, maybe for personnel matters, sometimes do you ever go into executive session as a board?
Rarely,
Yes.
but we do.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. So executive session is similar to other meetings, regardless of the reason that you're going in, whether it's litigation or some kind of personnel matters, which would probably be more typical for your board. The notice, it used to be that boards would just say, going into executive session and not state anything. It's private after all, so why would I say anything? Why would I describe it? The Division of Open Government has said that the agenda item has to say just enough so that the public understands what the board is doing in private. So there are things that we might not have to say, or because they would be damaging, like say, a very sensitive personnel matter, we might avoid the person's name, but you still have to describe generally what you're going into executive session for with enough details so that, again, the members of the public might understand what you are doing behind closed doors. So that's an important element of it. A few other things about executive session. If you are doing a meeting that is just for executive session, you don't have other agenda items first, you still have to open that meeting in public session and then move to vote to go into executive session. That motion to go into executive session is always a roll call vote, as is every vote within the executive session. So it's important that you adhere to that. But the most important thing, and I'm this is important to me as an attorney that may have to deal with disputes that happen relating to the subject matter of executive session, is that what happens in executive session stays in executive session. It is like Vegas in that regard. And it's important that we do that we're a team on that. You may disagree vehemently with other members of your board on the subject matter and the votes that happen in executive session, but we're a team, and you have to treat it as your duty to your team. I will also state that leaking something out of executive session before those minutes are able to be released is in and of itself an ethics violation that the Attorney General can prosecute. They don't often do that, but you owe it to your teammates, even if you disagree with them, to hold that confidentiality until such time as the executive session, the reason for executive session, has passed. And that's the most important thing about executive session. Any question, it can be a pretty tricky area. That's the other area where we see a fair number of complaints about open meeting law stuff. Any questions on that? I know you probably just use it sparingly, so nothing?
I had one question
Sure.
about in any time during a meeting, we're not sure if we can during a meeting.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Well, here's an example. If we're going to discuss a write-in candidate tonight, can we mention the person's name during our meeting?
Yeah, I mean, that's not an executive session item.
No, it isn't, but there's some members, I think there's confusion among board members as to,
No, there's no privacy. If there's a known quantity out there that is and it's fine on your agenda, there's no privacy right there of that person that is choosing to be a write-in candidate.
Okay.
I
Thank
mean, you don't have to mention the person's name, but if you do, I wouldn't discern any privilege or anything else that applies to that person's identity. That is not a privacy issue there that I would be concerned about.
I think Jan might be referring to, I was against mentioning for an elected board to bring up a specific name, because there's a couple of people who are thinking of asking for write-in votes. And would it look like we were the board was promoting one over anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, the board, so first of all, the board could choose to favor, I wouldn't necessarily take a vote on it, but there's nothing illegal about the board taking a position on its, or board members speaking of their advocacy for candidates. That has come up before. You have a First Amendment right to support people. You couldn't use the board's resources to promote a particular candidate, but you have your rights. Now, do I think that it makes some sense sometimes for a board to stay out of that stuff? Sure.
Absolutely.
But there's no legal bar to it. So it can seem a little uncouth and maybe perhaps not a great idea, but it's not a trouble spot that I'd be concerned. I wouldn't mind if you named half a dozen write-in people and say, look, I really like this person, I'm going to write them in. I met them like 10 years ago, and
Right.
I think
To
they're great.
specify one person over a couple of others who are considering it, I would find it giving them an unfair advantage. And
Yeah, but you have the right to do that. So again, I wouldn't do it if it wasn't on an agenda item, discussion of the election, but you're not prohibited from favoring something within your meeting. And it would be no different than the situation. Again, let's use the hypothetical thing. Let's say town meeting appropriated the money for this library expansion we've talked about and the elections in a couple of weeks. The board at their meeting can advocate for a yes vote or a no vote,
Right.
and as much as they want. Well, the only thing they can't do is spend the board's money or the town's money to put out like a mailer. So the board you're allowed to take a position on things that are subject to the election. So I'm not advocating for that, by the way. I'm just stating that you don't have to worry about it. I think makes a lot of sense for most boards to stay out of that and let the process be the process and not discuss it at your public meetings.
No.
But there's no prohibition there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, minutes. All right, this is another thing that's really changed in the open meeting law. It used to be, before the new version of the open meeting law and some amendments to it, that minutes didn't have to say much at all. And some boards used to just say, board opened the meeting, spoke about the items on the agenda, board closes the meeting, and it's 3 lines. And that's kind of what some boards used to do. You cannot do that anymore. You now have to do a bit more. You have to do your minutes in a way that are understandable. Again, I'll use that kind of person, any person in the public should be able to review your minutes and understand what happened generally. Does that mean that you have to explain in granular detail everything that happened at a meeting? You do not. But you have to introduce the topics that you spoke about. You have to record all the votes, and you have to give a general description. Now, a note about minutes, and some people prefer doing it one way or the other. Some people have a great minute taker that can do a virtual transcription. I wouldn't recommend it necessarily, but if that's your style, have at it. And if it works for you as a board, it works for you as a board. I don't care. If someone wants to do full sentences, fine. If someone wants to do a numbered outline, fine. Bullet points, fragmented sentences, it doesn't matter. However you choose to write your minutes is up to you. The only thing that's important is you include in the minutes the kind of information and the kind of description that I just talked about, along with recording all votes and things like that. So otherwise, it doesn't matter to me whatever style works well for your board, and it can change over time. The minute taker now may like to write it a certain way. Your minute taker next year could choose to write it in an entirely different way. It doesn't much matter. So again, we talk about the discussions of each subject, just enough information. If you are looking at documents, you have to list what those are. You don't have to include with your minutes an actual copy of those documents, but you do have to identify specific documents that you're talking about. If you have an executive session, the minute taking is the same rule applies. The only thing that is different is that the executive session minutes stay private until such time as they can be released. You're supposed to, for executive sessions, every once in a while, take a look at them and see if they're ready to be released, and then take a motion to release them if it comes to that. So there also used to be no real requirements on when you had to approve your minutes. We recommend that you do approve the last meeting's minutes at your next meeting. It's just easier to get in that groove. Regardless, the new rule on that, just in the last 5 years or so, is that minutes have to be approved within your next 3 meetings or 30 days, whichever is later. Now, if you only meet 4 times a year, then you don't have to approve your minutes very often. If you meet once a month, then in 3 months, you have to approve at least the last set of minutes. Again, I'd recommend that you have it be the first agenda item every month, every meeting, and just kind of knock it off, and then just kind of take care of it that way. So pretty straightforward, but they are looking at that because so many people make public records requests of minutes these days. Enforcement issues. So again, we don't see a lot of concern over enforcement. That said, it's easy for me as an attorney to be cavalier about enforcement. It obviously, no one wants to have someone filing a complaint with the town regarding enforcement. And there's a process that happens if someone makes an open meeting law complaint. Their first stop is with you. They don't go straight to the Attorney General, they go to you. And they have to raise a complaint about your open meeting laws within 30 days of the violation. So they still have to do it. They can't just start looking through old minutes and, pick up something 6 months down the road. If you receive an open meeting law complaint, first of all, we recommend that you don't waste much time. I would also get it to the whoever it may be, certainly to your director, maybe the town administrator, maybe town council. We help boards. We will help you sift through an open meeting law complaint. Within 14 days, 14 business days of the receipt of the complaint, you are actually required to meet and take some remedial action and send a copy of the complaint and the description of that action to the Division of Open Government. That is not much time. So you really have to get a meeting on the books. What you can do when you get together, let's say 4 or 5 days later, is you should take a vote. There should be some discussion on where you stand on it, but then you can delegate the responsibility for the actual response to the director, to town council, to someone else to actually issue that, so you don't necessarily have to get together again. If you don't take the necessary remedial action within 30 days, the complainant can file a copy of the complaint with the Division of Open Government, and then they will review it themselves, and they'll advise you if there's an issue that requires a correction in some way. So, questions on that? Okay, so enforcement, again, by and large, it's going to end up in a slap on the wrist. Don't do it again, please, and let's do it. So, and they'll probably require immediate and future compliance with the open meeting law. if it's a serial violation or it's a larger violation, they may say, hey, take a training session. The Attorney General's office runs training sessions, or meet with town council. We are doing a training session now. So that could be something. If it's a violation regarding minutes, or including executive session minutes, they may require that they be made public immediately. So that happens sometimes in egregious circumstances, and it would happen very rarely and really rarely for you all. They could nullify the action, the vote that you took at a meeting that was improper. Even more rarely is an actual fiscal penalty. I mean, maybe I see that once a year with municipal clients. Again, most of the time, it is just a don't do it again kind of posture to it. So, and again, I said this at the beginning, there's no such thing really as an unintentional violation. You're all deemed to have knowledge of the open meeting law and understand its basic tenets. That's why we do these sessions. That's why you get a copy of it. So you'll largely be charged with that. A relatively new feature of the open meeting law is sometimes we have seen people file open meeting law complaints that have little or no merit, like every day, or with respect to every single one of your meetings. There's a lot of folks out there who just have nothing better to do with their time than to do that. We have asked for relief from the Attorney General through regulations so we don't have to respond to these after a certain amount of time. What they've said is that, no, we can't do that because everyone has a right to still make the complaints. But if it's if person is like 6, 7, 8, 9 open meeting law complaints within the last 12 months, your board could request that person do a mediation. And if they refuse then to do the mediation, then the Attorney General won't review their complaints anymore. So there could be a penalty to that. It's not as robust as we would like, but it is somewhat helpful. So there is a requirement. I think I discussed this a couple times. You do get requirements to review this stuff. If in fact there have been violations of your board, then new members of the board must be provided with copies of those violations so that they understand what they're getting into with respect to that board. I haven't seen this really work out in practice that much, but it is a requirement for new board members. Have you, by the way, I should have asked this before, have there been any open meeting law complaints with respect to your meetings?
That we know of, no.
Okay, you would know, so, because there's a
Been
formal
there.
process, so. I'm not saying like people liking or disliking the meetings, I mean just a formal complaint. You haven't experienced any?
Not so far.
Okay, that's good to hear. And again, the Attorney General may issue advisory opinions. Generally speaking, they won't issue an advisory opinion before something happens, but they will if we're concerned about something that may happen, or you're trying to get a meeting together and you're not sure if it's subject to some one provision or another of the open meeting law, then we can request an advisory from them. And we have a really good relationship. My office has a really good relationship with the Division of Open Government. So sometimes we can just call them up and say, hey, we're facing this issue. Some people have raised it. What do you think? And they may give us a little bit of their insight. But we represent a whole bunch of towns and we've seen just about everything. So if you think that something either went wrong or you have some concerns as to whether or not, you should do something as an open meeting law, or if your posting is wrong or something like that, please contact us, or you might have to go through the town administrator first to contact us. We will give you a really fast answer. We don't want you to get in trouble. We don't want you to worry about things. That's kind of the way we do our town council business. So whether it's me or one of the other attorneys in the office, we'll always be around to help you out.
Thank you.
So let's see. I
Thank
think
you for
that-
your advice on the public comment.
Yeah, that's a biggie.
Your
So
public comment went right over the edge.
do you do a public comment period?
No, but we had one meeting where it was done and it was just everybody in the room got to talk. The children got to talk. They got to talk the second time and the third time.
Yeah, you know,
That kind of,
listen, I'm all for having good public discourse. I think we probably all
Absolutely.
are and think it's important, but you know, I think this is kind of again, a kind of no good deed goes unpunished thing. And I have seen people be so visceral. You know, you think that something that is so good and so wholesome as a library, that people would just like respect and honor the commitment that people give. You know, now you can tell I'm married to a librarian.
Thank you. Thank
But-
you.
But you know, when you have people, and I see it, my wife, she'll be walking in the door any minute now from her shift at the library, and I'm sure I'll get a story or two about someone who was just such a jerk. And it's unfortunate, but it happens, and it seems to be that people just love to yell and scream at their librarians, and sometimes, and so if you have a public forum in this day and age when people are incensed about whatever book they think is inappropriate or something like that, then you could be inviting a little bit of trouble in that public forum. Again, I'm not going to tell you not to do it, but I want you to be prepared if it does happen.
people
Typically, no one shows up.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not so bad.
I'd like to speak up about that because we did have a public forum that was a listening session. And we had quite a number of people that spoke up. It was very orderly, very courteous. We allowed everyone to speak. We even allowed one or two people to speak a second time. And I was the chair, am the chair. My opinion was I wanted to allow the public to say what they had to say, get it out, regardless of what our feelings was. And my opinion is that it turned out to be very successful because we did not have any complaint from any of the public that we didn't listen to them, that we didn't allow them to speak, and we denied people the right to speak. So from that point, it was my opinion, it was successful. Before this meeting, a number of us had very sleepless nights because we were anticipating a really horrendous meeting, and it turned out otherwise. So, I mean, we bit the bullet on that. But I do have a question. On an ongoing basis, what is your feeling about having public comments as part of the agenda?
So the only thing I could say is if I was in your shoes, I would probably not want to do it if I was the chair. But I could foresee if there was something of significant import that you may want to do it. And I don't mean public comment on a specific agenda item. I mean just overall public comment about anything involving the library. If you open that up and just like your agenda item just says public comment, not discussion of budget, public comment on the budget, that's different. That's a specific agenda item where if someone strayed from that discussion, then you could tell them to stop. But if you had genuine public comment, you are opening yourself up to potential interlopers who might say things that aren't particularly wholesome. If you're going to do it, And again, I'm not telling you to do it or not do it. Everything that you said about your rationale for doing it is perfectly good and reasonable, and I agree with it. If you're going to do it, you should put some time restrictions on it so that you can control it. So what I would suggest is that you do it for a limited period of time, the total session, the total public comment session, whatever you decide, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, whatever you want. And that you limit each speaker to a certain period of time. So that's content neutral restrictions on that speech, but it doesn't go to the content of their speech. And so that way you're at least guaranteeing some amount of control of it in case it goes bad. The example that I gave in the town we represent, where the people, this like book banning group just started talking, it was difficult to stop and the police had to come and it was a pretty ugly scene. And again, that's public discourse. I just want you to know that it could get like that. So if you're going to do it, and I think there's a good reason to do it, just be forewarned of when you can tell people to stop, which is not often. And the fact that your power to limit what they're saying really relates to the time period or the time you're allotting to them. So that would be my comment on it.
I know the selectmen, they require public comment. You have to write it down what you want to say and hand it to them ahead of time.
Well,
Or not verbatim, but like, for example, I went to announce something that was going on in town and I had to let them know ahead of time. It wasn't like you could just go up and say something.
yeah,
Is that?
that's a problem.
No.
I mean, I'll leave that to my partner, Lisa, who works with the select board more frequently, but that's could be a bit of an issue.
But we shouldn't, in other words, we shouldn't do it that way. then.
I wouldn't, no.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, my thought is, up until recently, we have never had anyone come and attend our meetings unless it's been someone like you, Jay, or, someone from our trust funds.
Someone we
company.
invited.
I mean, how many people have come to our meetings? So I don't know if you
It
need
has
to
happened
put
in the
public.
past, Laurel.
Excuse
It
me?
has happened in the past.
Oh, okay, before, but not, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
again, it doesn't take much to get people interested and fired up. I use throughout the course of our discussion here tonight, I use the example of a big library expansion.
Mhm.
I mean, I've seen pretty raucous debates over the scope of a library expansion. So
Right.
you can see how a sleepy little Board of Library Trustees meeting could get pretty ornery pretty quick.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
So
Thank
you have, and I think Darcy could give it to you if you don't, this PowerPoint. And
Yes.
if you think of something, sorry, that's my dog. If you think of something that you wanted to say or you forgot to say, just send an email. I'll answer a follow-up question here. It's no big deal. I can usually answer it pretty quick and we'll help you out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Of course, you're welcome.
And your dog is saying thank you.
Dog says
Yeah,
shut
no,
up.
she sees something outside, so yeah. Anyway, I'll go let her out. All right, so again, feel free to follow up. This was lovely. I'm glad we could have the discussion.
I am too.
And we'll stay in touch if you have any follow-up here.
Thank you for helping.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you again.
All right, have a good night.
Yeah,
Thank
you too.
All
I'll
right.
send it on the PowerPoint.
Okay, good.
Thank you
I
so
don't know
much.
if you saw that Lindsay was here, but she had to leave.
Okay.
And
Alright.
I have to leave too, because it's,
Uh-oh.
Oh, it's
so you
7:30.
still have a quorum, I believe. 1, 2,
Yep.
3.
Yeah.
You have 5. So sorry. I vote aye. No. All right, I've got to
My
go.
way to the law room.
All right. I'll watch
Okay.
watch it over and read the minutes when it comes, but I'll watch this. It's being recorded, right? So it'll be on
Mhm.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Good night. Sorry.
Good night, Ella.
Girl, happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Next up is a review of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review it? Any discussions? Any comments? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second,
I'll second that.
all those in favor, Mary Lou,
Yes,
Jan, Nancy,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes,
Lee. Yes. Oh, good oak. Mary Lou, you're up next.
oh, okay. I have, I sent you the monthly report from Bartholomew and, the quarterly, accounting report of our trust funds. I hope everybody got those.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
It's going up slightly.
Yeah, it is, yeah. It's slow, isn't it? Yeah,
Well, we're very, very conservatively invested right now.
yeah. Okay,
No questions?
No questions.
okay,
Mary Lou, is this your last meeting?
yes.
Well, let's thank you for all of your years.
Yeah, thank you. You're
Mary.
welcome. You're welcome. I really enjoyed it.
How long are you with treasurer, Mary Lou?
Well, I've been treasurer, I'd say maybe almost 6.5 years, maybe. I took over as treasurer. Sort of, it was a quick switch, and I took over as treasurer. Then I've been treasurer for the 2 times that I've run. So I'd say about 6, maybe 6 or 7 years.
Mary Lou, would you be okay with, once we get a new treasurer, that they come to see you to go over?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. Because there's some things that they have to do immediately, and stuff. Now I'll help whoever is going to be treasurer. I'll help them. Charlie came over during the pandemic. Charlie and I sat outside my garage. Outside, it was cold, and he went through everything, and to get me started. And so, no, I would be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you again, Mary Lou.
Oh, you're
Awesome.
welcome.
Okay, my report. I don't have it printed out because I don't have access to printers right now. Thank you, Bob. So, has everyone reviewed the circ stats? They're pretty on par with, last month and last year, I would say. Some stuff has gone up, especially Overdrive, Hoopla. Canopy was the exact number. Any questions?
So all our numbers have gone up, and that's excellent.
Yes. So programming, standout programming from last month, I just want to call attention to Curious Creatures, which was amazing. I got to hold a ferret. Look at you. It was a great time.
But no biting.
No. Ferret was adorable. And then of course I included all the totals. The youth number was actually higher than some of the other numbers from this fiscal year. So I
Excellent.
was pretty happy about that. So The program attendance was good. Any questions about that? Okay, I'll read the warrants. 2435 was $251.62. 2437 was $7,388.79. So the total was $7,640.41. And under other, I put the attachment, but I'll give everyone the, yes. I can just update everyone on the flooring first. So you've seen pictures. I have more pictures to send. It's going really well. It's a little slower than you previously thought, mainly just because they're restricted to their hours and it's very laborious and everything. So but it looks good. No, everything's going smoothly, just a little bit more slowly. Which is fine. I'd rather have it look good. And the shelving is being rearranged to be more seamless, which is good. The carpet itself looks great when it's down. So I'm excited for all of you to see it when the doors open back up.
How are you dealing with the fumes there, Darcy?
Sorry?
How are you dealing with the fumes? Are they bad from the
That's my
glue?
question.
Oh, the fumes. There are fans around. It's not
Oh, good.
great, but usually, you step outside for a few minutes and just get some fresh air. And it's not the easiest thing, but any staff member who's in the building who's having issues, some staff members have been hanging out at town hall and doing things that way. So it's
How about people wearing masks?
no,
No, I know. I mean, I know it's not great wearing masks, but it might help and to keep you healthy.
yeah, I mean, I can offer that solution. It's really just like the glue going down and it's pretty quick.
Yeah.
So
But as long as the windows can stay open and the fans on, it's gonna rain
Yeah.
for the next couple of days.
yeah. So it's been going well. It looks I've been telling everybody the adult section looks like a completely different library.
That's great.
You can go straight down the aisle.
Yes. Yes. So we have some mysteries and fiction going one way, and then large print and nonfiction are perpendicular to it. So it's mostly like that. There are a few exceptions, but it makes a lot more sense and it's easier to navigate. It's accessible too, and it's gonna look good when it's all done. So yeah. So then I included the funding request. So basically I wanted to have some things in place for when we do get somebody on board for the youth services position, and that process is starting within the next 2 weeks. We're starting interviews. So I want to make sure things are scheduled and on the calendar, and to make things easier. Obviously there will be things like story times or more library sponsored stuff, but this will give them the experience of outside people coming in and doing programs. And I went with Jenny the juggler. She has to be paid because she's $750 and our total is $1,000 from the grant, which is amazing. They are very generous to us. So Cornell Holy is $700 and Jenny the juggler is $750, and Jenny also needs a down payment anyway, so I am requesting to put forth $450 and send that to her. for the down payment, and the 300 left over from the grant can be sent to her after the performance.
How long is her performance, Darcy? About?
It's, I think, an hour and a half,
Mhm.
something like that. I put it on the calendar. I believe it's an hour and a half. It's
Okay.
long for a
Wow.
performer, which is very, sometimes they'll just be 45 minutes. Like this
Yeah.
is double that. RoboThink, we've had RoboThink in the past, 2 very successful full programs. So I wanted to have one each month, June, July, August, because every time we have them, we have requests for them to come back every single time as people are walking out. And we also always have people on the waiting list.
Many
So-
people can come to that?
What?
Well, how many people can come?
They really accommodate for 10 kids.
Oh, I see.
So, I know it's limited that way, but it's also very, very successful. And it gets people in the library. But so the next one is Little Groove. That's interactive early childhood music. That we cover 2 programs, one in July and one in August. And I should have sent the website, but the website has, their music and everything like that. And they're local, they're in Newburyport. And then so one of the suggestions that somebody brought up for the strategic plan was to do more learning how to play music programs. I thought this one would be really cool. Having a class of kids learning how to play the ukulele. It's school-age kids. And the person, Julie, would be bringing all of the ukuleles. Unless somebody has their own and they want to bring that, that's fine. But she'll bring the ukuleles for the kids to use. But I think that would be really fun. I think people would be interested in that.
I can show my age by saying, is Ali Loki gonna come?
You are sure-
Blank look.
Even I don't know that.
It goes back 60 or something years.
I only go back as far as
So is
Brian
that
Tim,
different
so.
from
Do you remember Arthur Godfrey?
That's one. Yes, I know who that is.
Yeah. She was up in the night.
Okay. And then Spanish classes. So Neglast is one of our patrons who I've known for the past 9 years, basically, as long as I've been working at the library. And she would be interested in doing kind of fun, interactive Spanish classes with kids. And this would be, I think, 6 classes, 3 per age level. So June, July, August, 1 each month for each age level, if that makes sense. We're still working out the logistics, but she would bring music, teach them dancing for the culture. I think she's Argentine. I need to double check with her,
And-
but
How many age levels are there?
2 age levels. So like the preschool, the 2s to the 6, and then the school age. So this is just for supply costs, the number she's yeah. And then I just included, I'm working stuff out with Jackson Bus, who is our patron, one of our patrons actually, but also he's from New England Biolabs, and he's done successful programs in the past too with our patrons. So that'll be free, but I wanted to include that. It'll either be one, or I'm trying to line them up for like each month, basically. But we're still in discussions about that. So that is my explanation of the programming requests.
And this
Any
would cover the summer programming. That's part of the summer programming.
Yes, yes.
And the total was how much? I don't have it in front of me.
2375.
So I make a motion to approve these programs. You want it all at one time instead of individually, right? I make a motion to approve these programs, for the summer program for children from the state aid funds.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor, Mary Lou,
Yes,
Jan, Nancy,
Yes,
Kathy,
Yes,
Lee,
Yes.
Bob, yes, approved.
Thank you. And you know, like I said, the state aid round 2 is on its way. So it'll be it's usually April, I think. Right? You used to.
Yeah.
Jan, I'm asking you to remember this.
Sometimes we used to
It's usually April for us.
3 of them when they were.
Oh.
Remember that?
Okay.
In different times. I honestly don't remember.
Oh, okay.
forward we
Of
can,
course, I didn't know if Hamilton had separate ones, but
going forward, we can draw on some of the trust funds to
Mhm.
utilize them.
2 times with the state.
so
I loved it.
next month I plan to come back with more furniture samples. Because now that things are moving along,
I think we should take some freshen up everything.
I agree.
I think
I
we need a
agree.
flag. which
I can't hear Jan
The
at all.
flag I have planned
Yeah.
out.
And I think the furniture, definitely, I just think this is
Mhm.
the perfect time to really look at everything with fresh eyes and say, you know, maybe,
Signage,
Yeah, the signage, absolutely. Yeah, I
something that
have
looks
plans for all
or
of
don't you-
all of this. But I completely agree. So I'll bring like pictures and samples and money information and everything for
We
whatever
need some
is.
good pops of color.
I agree. I mean, I will say that when you're in the library, the gray stripes do kind of have like a bluish look to them, even though they're gray. So it's kind of like the ones I wanted. But I agree with the pops of color because you know, gradually over the years the green shelves are leaving us. So and they'll be replaced with brown shelves. So we'll also need some other colors.
Right.
as a member of the male persuasion, don't ask my opinion on colors.
What do you think about pastel pink?
Pink, the only color I like is pink. There's the problem.
Okay. All right. I mean, I was thinking all sorts. I mean, you know, and he'll also spruce up the painting and, you know,
Yeah,
get
no,
that going.
I mean, because this isn't gonna happen again for a long time, that we have this opportunity
Exactly.
to really feel like things are freshened up and
Mhm.
cleaned up and just orderly and
Yeah.
aesthetically pleasing. I just think it's a great opportunity.
Yeah. No, it's an exciting time. So get ready for some samples.
Sounds good.
Okay, item 6. Next month, we need to vote on the officer positions. And we have the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary that potentially will extend for one more year if that's what they like. I'm willing to stay on as chair for another year. Jan,
Yeah, I could be vice chair another year.
Nancy?
Yep.
Okay. And it leaves us with the critical position of the trustees, the
The
treasurers. Looking for anyone who's willing to step up. I'm glad Lee asked Mary Lou if she's available to help with the training process, because when Mary Lou does it, she does it, and we finished in 5 minutes, and you think that's it, but I know better.
every once in a while, it's like anything else. It's
Yeah.
really not bad, except when it is, you know, something happens.
That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
It's a piece of cake what it is.
yeah.
It's not a piece of cake what it
Yeah.
is.
But it takes a little something to get it all going, because you gotta get bonded, and you gotta contact Bartholomew, and you gotta get everything. All that is just official stuff that you gotta do at the beginning to get you know, and, you know, once all that's settled, then it's not, it's fun, not too bad, but yeah. But I will help out however I can.
No one's interested in the treasurer's position at this point? Do we do force nominations?
I think if you just send out an email saying, think
Yeah.
about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do a blanket email for the
Yeah.
4 positions. I have in my notes from Jay that we will eliminate old business and other.
Okay.
But we can, in place of it, put agenda items for the next meeting, and that would cover many, we have to be specific about it,
But then that would be an agenda item.
Right.
Yeah.
I
right?
think that's. Oh, we need to do the writing.
Yeah, that was on the
Oh,
agenda.
yeah, okay. Let's go back to the write-in. Skip over bullet points. I was unfamiliar with the process of a write-in. And I've heard a number of different comments about what it entails. But basically what it is, a candidate who is willing or would like to become a trustee board member after, you know, the process that is expired for getting 35 votes, signatures. There is a write-in campaign, and all it requires is that the town clerk be notified of the name of the person who wants to be put on the ballot.
And that's a request more than a requirement. It helps the staff.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
it's
It could be
encouraged.
a literal write-in, or it could be typed in, pre-typed
Right,
in.
or people sometimes hand out stickers with their name and address on it if they prefer, because the address
Yeah.
does have to be there.
So I know of one candidate that is willing to have their name placed.
And I know of a couple
Okay,
that
and
said they'd be willing to consider it. 2 of them
Okay.
have been on the board previously.
okay, so they need to put their name on the ballot.
Right, if they,
Can you tell us who they
Yeah, why
are?
don't we?
I don't know who they are from.
Well, why don't we find out who wants to be written in?
well, if they want to say, they'll say, I guess.
But how are we gonna know?
Well, if they'll have, it only takes one more name on the ballot.
Why don't we let Bob finish with the person that he knows is willing, and then Kathy, you can tell us the people that you know who are willing.
No, the people that I said, yeah, I think I'll write my name in, or I'll have my husband write my name in, or I'll have my neighbors write my name in.
Well, okay, then,
The other-
Yeah, so we'll proceed with the one we know.
right, let's proceed with that.
And who is that?
Do you pronounce his last name?
I think it's Kosh, like
K-O-S.
K-O-S-C-H. It's hard, yeah,
Who?
Kosh. He runs Curious Creatures.
Oh.
He owns it.
Yeah.
K-O-
K-O-S-C-H.
let's see. You know his address is?
No,
Because you have to put that down.
You
too.
you don't
No,
have to.
you don't
put
have
the
to.
Oh, you
address,
don't?
You
No,
don't have to.
If
They have to
change
be
it?
able to identify the person. It used to
Okay.
have to be exact.
yes, I got an email from Beth and she explained that even if you misspelled the name, if the intention was clear, but it's best if you can put the proper name, obviously.
Yeah. And, okay. So there's me and who else is running? Oh, you are, that's. So, and so we don't have a third because Mary Lou's not ready.
Right.
And so the, for
That's
us.
the thing.
All right, so nobody else is submitted, do you know? I haven't seen a ballot, you know?
Yeah,
I was-
I saw the ballot today. You and I are there,
Okay.
but so there is vote for 3.
Right,
So
right.
basically another candidate would have to be written in.
Okay.
And also you have to do the circle.
Right, right.
And
The reason I asked, is I was kind of imagining, in fact, I dreamed about this last night, that somebody had put their name in, and we didn't know until we went to vote. No, there's a third name.
Oh my gosh.
The ballot is printed.
No, it's okay, I wasn't sure if there's a third. Yeah, I mean, it could have been done, and we didn't know about this, but it's just.
Mhm.
And I know Bob had asked me to check about another method. And if
Mhm.
nobody's name is written in, or nobody, once they're written in, if they don't accept it, then anybody can write a letter to the Board of Selectmen and request to be appointed, and they would vote on appointing the person.
Right.
It should be the board, it says in the bylaws that it should be the Board of Trustees and the Board of Selectmen would vote on appointing that person as a trustee.
Okay, but again, someone would have to do that for us to act on it.
Well, somebody would have to want to do it, decide afterwards if they'd do it, they'd ask the Board of Selectmen to appoint them to the position. It's been done before. We have someone on the board now that did it that way. But that's another, that's another option. You had asked me, Barbara, you sent me an email asking me to find that out. So I did.
Appreciate it. I was thinking of another option, that was to leave the position open, which I don't think we want to do. But
Well, if you leave the position open,
Somebody's gonna get written in. Somebody will get.
Oh,
written
okay.
in. There's no doubt about it. And all you need is one vote.
Okay,
And that's the whole thing. It's
yeah,
nice
all
if,
you need is
if
one
you
more than
notice-
anybody else.
I'm sorry, what?
All you need is one more than anybody else. So say,
Correct. Or only one person gets one vote, they're in. So that's why I think.
unless
no,
somebody else writes in and they get 2 votes, then they're in.
Yes, Kathy, what I said was, if one person runs and
Right.
that person gets one vote, they're written in and nobody else gets written in, it only takes one vote to get on the board. That's what I'm saying.
That's
So
all.
it makes sense to me, to know if somebody would like to be written in. And also to know why they would want to be on the Board of Library Trustees. So
They don't have to say why. They just,
No, but
So,
we'd like to know.
we
we
would
like
like
to
to-
know.
yeah, but that doesn't. Yeah,
why can't we ask the question? Darcy
you can.
spoke with
You
Dean,
ask
so
them.
that's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, you can ask them of anybody you want, sure.
So that's what I'm trying to do, Kathy. Is to
Yeah.
find out a little more so we can be a little better informed when we go to the ballot and
Uh-huh.
cast our votes.
Yeah,
So he mentioned to you that he was interested?
I talked to him and he was immediately like, yeah, that sounds great. No, like
Well,
he's very nice. Very, I think it would be, great to bring in somebody who's passionate about children's programming.
absolutely.
He's,
About any programming.
yeah, any programming, but yeah, especially the children's. Yeah, he seems very interested.
and we're interested in any other person who would like to be on the board. And we would be interested in talking to them as well.
Right, absolutely. That's the only person I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the write-in campaigns are difficult because somebody will write in Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
It always happens.
That's always what takes the most time in the vote counting.
That's why I feel it is kind of good to know if somebody really wants to be on the board.
Especially if we know Mickey Mouse.
Right, I really not
He's not a
excited
resident.
about Mickey Mouse.
A resident.
It's in the public domain now. Maybe it would
Yeah.
work.
Except if he decides. Now, how would this work for Curious Creatures? Would he still be able to charge for programs at the library? I don't know.
I
He's been
don't know
doing
about
programs at
that
the
yet.
library for since my grandchildren were small.
Yeah, I still do programs. I love it.
You do, but we don't pay you.
No, it's not me. I said he's been doing programs at the library.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I mean, I think, it would still be worth having him on the board.
Right, right.
And he does programs for other civic groups.
But
So like this is the one-shot deal. So.
don't you think
no.
maybe if that's gonna be an issue for him, that he's not gonna be able to do programs and get paid, he should know that up front before he decides
Absolutely,
to do,
but I don't know that's the case. I'm just putting it
No,
out.
but that's what I'm saying. We need to find that out.
Right.
maybe that's just a question for the town council.
Yes.
It
would-
might be a question for the town council,
would be,
because
yes.
it's not fair to him to have to do that and then
And then
find
all
out
of a sudden-
afterwards
No,
that
you're
he
right.
can't do programs. I mean, I think
Oh, I
really,
know.
yeah,
I mean, I didn't approach him so that he would run more Curious Creatures programs. I just thought he's very charismatic and seemed open to being on the board.
yeah, but he
He
might
should
not.
know if
he
they have
should
no
know.
event, Tim.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he should know. So that needs to be
Yeah,
found out. and
that's
then,
true.
Yeah, let him know, you know.
There
it-
there
it
could
let-
be a question
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
Talk to him again.
And
Yeah.
then
being on the trustees and then doing programs for the trust, or be an elected member of any board in town and doing, I don't know how it works. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't talk to him, talk to the town council.
But the town council left it open to email him. I think that's the perfect thing to email him about.
Right.
Because I think it's only
Okay.
fair to that fellow to know that before he decides whether he wants his name written in.
Right.
Yeah.
So we don't have any other names in for any other interested people?
No names.
No names.
Well, if they pop up, it'll be a surprise.
Well, they won't pop up. I mean,
No, I
people
mean,
have to write it in.
if they, Jan, if they get a write-in votes.
Right.
We don't know if there's a group who might have somebody.
We don't know. We really don't know.
No, that's true, but
Mm.
does anybody else know anybody
No.
particularly who wants to be written in as a trustee?
Thing to me.
That would
I
be
know a
good.
couple of people who said they might consider it, but one especially was on the board prior, but she never gave me permission to mention her name, so I'm not going to.
Okay, no commitments. Okay.
Yeah.
So we can't move on
That's
anything.
fine.
No, I mean, that's crazy to ask a name, of somebody, who doesn't know.
Well, if they have to be serious about it. Anyway,
It'll be a series.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
Second?
Can I just have one question? Darcy, you think next Wednesday, not full service, but next Wednesday would be open for some service?
Tuesday.
Tuesday, I'm sorry, I thought you said Wednesday.
Yes. Tuesday, yes.
So do they work on the holiday or
They'll work on the holiday.
they don't?
They do. They
Okay.
plan to come in on Monday. Yeah.
Okay,
Well, I
that's, good. So
suppose
that's kind of a
holiday.
quasi holiday.
Yeah, but they'll get a key and they'll be able to work.
Second?
Wait,
Rob, that again? Okay. Oh, need a second?
yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, second.
All those in favor, Jay, Mary Lou,
Yes.
Jan,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Kathy,
yes.
Lee?
Yeah.
Bob, yes.
All
Done
right.
and dusted.
Just a reminder, town meeting, April 29th.
And the candidates night is what night?
24th.
The 24th.
I
All
hope
right.
they have the town channel fixed, channel 8. It hasn't been up all